The poet is speaking of the kings of thought in the higher regions of the mind, and he describes audacious in their sense of God-born strength. These dare to grasp with their thought truths absolute. Truths absolute cannot be conceived, cannot be held by thought. But these powers had the daring to try to catch the truths absolute in the formula of thought by an abstract purity of godless sight, by a percept nude, intolerant of forms, they brought to mind what mind could never reach and hoped to conquer truth's supernal base. That is, they tried in abstract terms, abstract concepts, and nude perceptions which are shorn of every mental coating, that intolerant of forms, the formless truths, the principles. Through these, they brought to the mind what the mind could never hope to reach. And by these means, they hoped to conquer the upper base of truth. But they could not do it. A stripped imperative of conceptual phrase, architectonic and inevitable, translated the unthinkable into thought. The truth absolute is naturally unthinkable. But these powers try to render what is unthinkable into thought by a stripped, a very bare, unadorned phrase of concept, and architectonic, systematizing, inevitable. That is, when you are face to face with that phrase, it looks as if it is inevitable. And these were the strategies of the kings of thought to capture the unthinkable and the absolute of the supreme truth. A silver-winged fire of naked subtle sense. There is a subtle sense behind the gross sense of which we are normally aware. It is only when we go behind the surface that we can become conscious of the subtler senses. Now, a silver-winged fire, that is the pure fire of subtle sense, an ear of mind withdrawn from the outward rhymes, an ear of mind, not the ear of the body, that is a listening of the mind which had withdrawn from outward rhymes, outward rhythms, outward sounds, discovered the seed sounds of the eternal world, There is an eternal world, a concentration of creative energy. Of that, the constituent seed sounds were discovered by the ear of the subtle mind. Not only discovered the seed sounds of the eternal world, but has also the rhythm and music heard that build the worlds. The worlds proceed on the wings of what is called nada, a continuous celestial sound vibration. They seized that and seized in things the bodiless will to be. In those rarefied heights, they discovered that there is a formless will in everything that has a form. It is because the Supreme willed to formulate itself in terms of so many movements and objects that they exist. The illimitable they measured with numbers roars. What can't be measured, what can't be limited, they measured with the foot rules made of numbers and traced the last formula of limited things. Last formula, because beyond this formula, what is limited breaks out into the limitless. In transparent systems, bodied termless truths, termless, boundless truths were put in form of systems that were transparent, transparent to the studying eye. The timeless made accountable to time, that is, the timeless was measured out in terms of time and valued the incommensurable supreme. Incommensurable is immeasurable, which can't be sized up, which can't be valued, but these powers of mind went on to value, put a value on this supreme reality, to park and hedge the ungrasped infinitudes of the Supreme. They wanted to hold, to put a fence around them, to fix them in a particular ground, park them and hedge them. In order to do that, they erected absolute walls of thought and speech. This is a hint that when we try to express the reality in terms of thought or speech, we really hedge, we really park what cannot be hedged, and made a vacuum to hold the one, made everything empty, emptied of forms, emptied of ideas and thoughts, in order to hold the one. Because at this level, the mind conceives that the reality is one. But to hold the one, they need to empty the situation of the many. The many have to be rejected in order that the one may stand. In their sight, they drove towards an empty peak. That is why they visualized an empty peak, a peak that is bare, nude and empty. where the One can be established, a mighty space of cold and sunlit air, to unify their task, excluding life which cannot bear the nakedness of the vast. In order to unify their grasp, to unify their system, they had to exclude the multiplicity, the manifold variety of life. They excluded from their vision, because life, which is limited on every front, cannot truly bear the nakedness, the direct impact of the vastitude of the Supreme. They made a cipher of a multitude. They reduced the multitude into a zero, that there is really no multitude. Multitude is there because we think it is there. There is a philosophy called idealist philosophy, which holds that things are there for me because I think they are there. Otherwise, nothing is there. Now, this is an echo of that philosophy. He says, they made a cipher of a multitude. In negation found the meaning of the all. There is really nothing. And in nothingness, the absolute positive. A single law, simplest is the cosmic theme. The theme of cosmic movement was reduced into a simple single law, a law of nothingness, a law of zero, compressing nature into a formula. Their titan labor made all knowledge one, not multifold, but one. A mental algebra of the spirit's ways, symbolic mathematics, an abstract of the living divinity. The mind forgets that the divinity is something living and vibrant and cannot be shut up in a formula. But here they make an abstraction of it, which can be represented in a mental algebra equation. Here the mind's wisdom stopped. Beyond this, the mind could not work. Even the higher gods could not work. It felt complete. They felt that what they had done was complete in itself, for nothing more was left to think or know. Everything has been taught, everything has been known. In a spiritual zero, it sat throned, mental wisdom sat throned in a spiritual zero and took its vast silence for the ineffable. For this, the silence of the zero conception, the mind took for the inexpressible reality. But actually, it is only a conceptual zero. This was the play of the bright gods of thought. Till this line, he has been describing the play of the bright gods of thought on the peaks of mind, attracting into time the timeless light, imprisoning eternity in the hours. This they have planned to snare the feet of truth. They want to imprison, to catch truth with their feet, so that she can't move from their hold. This they have planned to snare the feet of truth in an aureate net of concept and of phrase, in a golden net of concept and phrase. The mind conceives and expresses that conception in a phrase. And in this net of concept and phrase, they had planned, the gods of thought, planned to snare, to catch the feet of truth, so that, and keep her captive for the thinker's joy. So an abstract thinker could luxuriate that he has the supreme truth. He has compressed it in a formula, in a conceptual phrase, in his little world built of immortal dreams. They are not realities, but of dreams. There must she dwell. Truth has to dwell there, mirrored in the human mind, walled in the human mind. An empress prisoner in her subject's house. The thinker is, after all, a subject. And in his subject house, in the house of this subject, she who is the empress, the truth, becomes a prisoner and has to live there. Adored and pure and still on his heart's throne, no doubt. He adores the truth, keeps it pure and unmoving on the throne of his heart, yet a prisoner in the walls of the mind. His splendid property, cherished and apart, the thinker keeps this property as something cherished and apart from everything else, in the wall of silence of his secret muse, always contemplating, thinking about it, erecting walls around it of his thought conceptions, immaculate in white virginity, kept. He doesn't allow her to be touched by any kind of imagination, any kind of mental movements, keeps her inviolate, the same forever and forever one. He doesn't allow her to multiply. He is worshipped, changeless goddess through all time. Goddess is the truth, the empress, or else, if she is not treated as a changeless goddess, she becomes, or else, a faithful consort of his mind, a companion of his mind, assenting to his nature and his will. She sanctions and inspires his words and acts, prolonging their resonance through the listening ears. That is, she sanctions the movements of his mind, companion and recorder of his march, crossing a brilliant tract of thought and life, carved out of the eternity of time. That is, mind carves out a tract, an area of thought and life in the domain of time, and the captured truth serves as a companion to this mind. And this thinker, a witness of his high triumphant star, her guarded servitor to a crowned idea, though she is divine, she has been made a servitor, a service man, a servant to his idea which he crowns. He shall dominate by her a prostrate world. He has reduced the world by a systematic analysis into a prostrate condition, and by what he thinks he has captured of the truth, he hopes to dominate this world. A warrant for his deeds and his beliefs. This captured truth in the mind of the thinker gives a sanction for whatever he does, for whatever he believes. She attests his right divine to lead and rule. The mental truth authenticates the right of the thinker to lead humanity and to rule the world. Or first it was goddess, next it was a faithful consort of his mind. Now awe, as a lover clasps his one beloved, Godhead of his life's worship and desire. She becomes an object of his desire, icon, idol of his heart's soul idolatry. She now is his and must live for him alone. Thought agrees, truth agrees to belong to his thought mind and lives for him alone. She has invaded him with her sudden bliss, but in the process of his embracing this truth in form of conception, she invades him with her sudden bliss, an exhaustless marvel in his happy grasp, an allurement, a caught ravishing miracle. She floods his being with bliss and effects a miracle. Her now he claims after long rapt pursuit. So long, through all the stages, he has pursued her as a lover pursues his beloved. And now, having caught her, he claims her for himself, the one joy of his body and his soul. Inescapable is her divine appeal, her immense possession and undying thrill, and an intoxication and an ecstasy. This is what the thinker who has caught the supreme truth or something of it in terms of a phrase or a concept, he has that intoxication and an ecstasy. The passion of her self-revealing moods, a heavenly glory and variety, makes ever new her body to his eyes. To his eyes, she is ever new. She never bores him, or else repeats the first enchantment's touch. The first touch leads to a certain enchantment. Now, she repeats it again and again, so that he feels the thrill, the luminous rapture of her mystic breasts and beautiful vibrant limbs, a living field of throbbing new discovery without end. He goes on making new discoveries in her form endlessly. A new beginning flowers in word and laugh. A new charm brings back the old extreme delight. He is lost in her. She is his heaven here. Truth smiled upon the gracious golden game. All the while, when the thinker imprisons the supreme truth in his mind, the full truth from above smiles on the golden game that is going on below. Truth smiled upon the gracious golden game. Out of her hushed eternal spaces leaned, bent down, the great and boundless goddess failed to yield. She pretended to yield the sunlit sweetness of her secrecies. Incarnating her beauty in his clasp, she gave for a brief kiss her immortal lips and drew to her bosom one glorified mortal head who has reached those heights of thought. She yields to him, and through him she made earth her home, for whom heaven was too small. Even heaven is not enough to contain her, but for the moment, in the spirit of the game, she made earth her home. She agrees to tenant this earth. In a human breast, her occult presence